Mars, keep your remarks, cause the artist ain't done with me yet. Cause I'm going through the muck and the mire, all of the hell and the fire. So when I come out on the other side, I will be such a desire, like a Picasso or a Van Gogh or a porcelain.
What's up, everybody? It's Steph the Pharaoh. Today, I'm here with Taylor Tosczak out of British Columbia, Canada, that is. She's a life coach. She's an intuitive breathwork facilitator and a business mentor. And, you know, I've been following Taylor's journey for a little over 2 years now. And I mean, just seeing her transformation from where she was and just knowing a little bit about her, I'm excited just to have her on today to share her story and to kind of dive into what it took her to get to the level that she's at today and like what decisions she had to make. And nonetheless, you're going to find that her story is inspiring, it's motivating, and you might even be able to pull some inspiration to help you guys, you know, get to where you want to go. And I think a lot of what she's talking about and what she will talk about is, very relatable because we as humans, you know, kind of go through very similar emotions. We go through very similar crossroads, not to say we're all the same, but for the most part, we can learn from each individual. So Taylor, thank you for carving out the time to be on my show today. It's awesome to have you on. I'm really excited just to, you know, dive into your story. But thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be here. So I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Right. All right. Yeah. So take us back a little bit. You know, I know right now you are a life coach and following, you know, your Instagram stories and just seeing what you do, seeing all the women that you help. I know you're always on coaching calls, which is cool. And you always share those calls as well. And, but I know that it didn't always start that way. I mean, cause like I said, I followed your journey, and at one point, you know, I think you were primarily, like a fitness coach as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And yeah, I never imagined myself being a life coach. In all honesty, I didn't have any aspirations career-wise, especially being a kid. I grew up in a relatively normal household where my mom worked in administration and my dad was in sales. And it was very just mom and dad go to work, they come home, we have vacations every now and then, and we go to school. And it was a very like normal, mundane life. There was no significance or anything big or crazy or adventurous to it. And it just felt like life was just consistent and it made sense. I had two younger sisters. We had a good house. We were middle class. Everything was just perfect. And I remember going through my childhood really feeling that sense of just normalcy and almost like insignificance. Like there wasn't any real purpose to life. And I never quite understood why we were here in the first place. But there was this very inquisitive inner child inside of me who wondered, like, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Are we meant to just like pay bills and die? This seems so boring to me. And yeah, that was me as a little girl. And I think that innately, I always knew that there was a reason and purpose for us being here, but I never understood what it was, especially because what I was surrounded by wasn't people who were following their purpose. I think that you see people in your immediate environment and you learn from them, and they're these reflections of who you think you should be and how you think you should grow up. So I didn't have any intentions of creating a big impact or having a business or ever being an entrepreneur. I didn't even know that entrepreneurship was a thing. And then when I was about 6 years old, I had one of the first ever spiritual experiences of my life where I had been laying in bed and kind of like dozing in and out, but I started to feel every single vibration in my body. And I don't know what was happening at this time. It was just like started to feel all the vibrations, all of the energy moving through my body. And if you've ever heard of astral projection before, this is what happened to me. So I basically like transcended out of my body, and I had this all-knowing feeling that I remember the words coming to me like, I am me, but me was not me as Taylor. It wasn't my human body. It wasn't this like, this is who I am. It was like, I am so much more than just what I see and what I'm experiencing right now. And there's a significance and a purpose and a divine meaning for why you're here. And I remember being so freaked out by it. I couldn't tell anyone. I'm 6 years old being like, what just happened to me? Am I crazy? What's going on? and then going back to life. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, I know that there's purpose. I know that there's meaning. I know that I'm here to do something, but I have no idea what it is or how to do it.
Wow. So having that experience early on, I mean, I can only imagine what that would have felt like. Like you said, you felt like you probably couldn't tell anybody. And that's pretty powerful, because I've learned about astral projection as I was older. Not, like,
Yeah.
that's intense. Did you have any other experiences like that growing up?
I think that throughout my journey and throughout my life, I've had moments of spiritual and like intuitive knowing and intuitive downloads. And I think that we all innately have these spiritual gifts. I feel that in my soul. And I think that there's experiences that bring fear into play, and that was what happened for me there. So I suppressed that for quite some time, and it freaked me out. So I continued to just go throughout my life and kind of wanting to be normal, but also simultaneously feeling like I never belonged, like I don't belong here. And that was the underlying feeling beneath everything that I'd experienced in my life. And looking at my friends and seeing the way that they were, and just I always felt like the black sheep, and it was this weird underlying feeling. Yeah.
I felt the
And
same way.
you felt the same way. Yeah, I feel like, when you have that feeling, it's like, where am I supposed to fit in? So you try to find all these different boxes that you're supposed to fit in, and then you morph yourself and you become a people pleaser. And it's like, who am I in the midst of all of this? And that was a moment for me where I remember sitting with my friends and being like, I don't even matter. Like, I don't even know how I matter here, but I know that I matter. And it was such an interesting experience. And then a few months after that, I had one of my most life-changing events that really broke me down and cracked me open. And I was 13 years old at this time. And my mom had sat down me and my sisters on the couch, and she put a Kleenex box on the table, and she's like, I have something to tell you guys. And being a human, we're very empathetic, and we can feel energy from people no matter what. And I could feel this sense of despair and sadness and just pain coming from my mom. And I'm like, what's going on? And I was like, there's something wrong. And as a kid, and I've got my two younger sisters here. And she says to us, she's like, your dad's not coming home. She's like, he's in jail and we're not going to get back together. And so this was a moment of my life that made absolutely zero sense. Like, things made sense, but this made no sense. My dad was the most positive inspiration in my life, and I never knew what was going on. I knew that my dad was an alcoholic and he had a lot of like his own stuff going on, but it turned out that he was, selling marijuana in order to support our lives. And that was something that was so significant for all of us, because it's like, wow, I never knew that. What is going on behind the scenes? There's these secrets and things that have been told from us. So I unfortunately took on this victim mentality of, this is happening to me and my life sucks. And I fell down this dark rabbit hole of, victimhood and feeling sorry for myself, and finding this path of darkness and alcoholism and abusive toxic relationships, and abandoning myself, and continuously trying to find who I'm supposed to be in the world in other people, and continuously trying to escape myself and the emotions that I experienced at that time, because nothing made sense to me. It was just this overwhelming confusion and sadness and anger, and I did not know how to process my emotions. They were such intense vibrations in my body, and I would not only experience a lot of the emotions of my own, but also my little sisters and my mother and my family. And it was just so much that I started to suppress myself and suppress my mind and suppress my gifts through things like alcohol and drugs. And I felt so numb and so disconnected. But there was a period of time where I was suicidal, and I actually did not want to live my life anymore, because I felt like nothing was ever going the way that I needed it to. And it was like thing after thing after thing kept happening. You know, abusive relationships, being bullied in school, being kicked out of school, like my mom hating me, me getting arrested, like so many things continued to happen. And it was because I took on the role of the victim of life is happening to me and I'm completely out of control. So I continued to fall down this path of darkness. But I remember sitting in my room contemplating suicide, like being in this point where I'm like ready to finish it here.
Mm.
And the words came through. It was like, I'm going to call it like an intuitive download, like an intuitive hit. It was just like this higher self inspiration came through me that was like, this is part of your story. And it made no sense to me because I'm like, what story? I don't have a story. Like, what are we talking about here? But it was just something that felt so pure and so true and so loving that I had to accept it. And I'm like, there's something more. And so I took a step back, and that was kind of me coming back to this realization of I am here for something, and I am here to tell a story, and I'm here to share my story. And so continue to go through my life after that. And I'll take a step back because I keep talking
Yeah,
now.
no, you're good. I'm following you because it's quite interesting that you say I mean, from childhood, you talked about just living a mundane life, and I think, I mean, I can relate to that as well. We don't realize it in the moment, but as you're speaking, I'm just like, wow, all of these thoughts are just racing through my head about how many people actually feel that way. How many people feel that they're here for something, they just don't know what. And then going back to where you talked about falling down the rabbit hole of just like that victim mentality. How many years were you in that like state of mind? Because you talked about a few relationships and friendships and things like that.
It really started initially when I went into high school. So, when I was graduating grade 8 is kind of when the whole thing with my dad happened. And I was at my grade 8 grad, and one of my teachers, who was my grade 6 teacher, he actually called out into the audience looking for my dad. He called out my dad's name because we both had the same teacher. And it was one of those moments of sitting in front of the school being so embarrassed that my dad's not there. Like, I just had to sit in the shame and sit in like, wow, like this is so embarrassing. And why did this happen to me? Why am I experiencing these emotions? So from the very beginning of high school up until about grade 10, grade 11 is when I was in this darkness. I went through relationships with men who were very emotionally, psychologically abusive, but I was seeking out validation outside of myself. And so looking back, I can really recognize that as I was feeling such an abandonment from my father, I was seeking out that validation through a man. I was looking for a man to see me and to validate me and to give me what I was needing, which was essentially this sense of purpose and meaning. And so I sought that out in emotionally unavailable men, very toxic relationships, and continued to abandon myself through those and through drugs and through alcohol. And it got me to the point where I was kicked out of my first high school because I was skipping a lot of school. I was being bullied, and I'm just like, everyone hates me. I hate myself and I hate everyone. And it was very, like, very, very, we'll just use the word dark. This was the darkness of my life. I was in this shadow around me where I couldn't see anything other than myself, and the way that I saw myself was there's something wrong with me, and I'm just, my life doesn't matter, and why care about anything. And then I got kicked out of a second school because I also continued the pattern of skipping school and continuing to not show up and, being bullied and being beat up. And I just kept hiding. I kept hiding from my life, essentially. It got me to the point where I was in the principal's office and they're like, Taylor, you're not going to graduate if you continue going the way that you are. You're going to end up having to take extra classes or go through summer school, or you won't graduate. And then that was the moment where I'm like, I remember sitting in the park actually, and again, it was one of these intuitive downloads where I was just, you see the right thing at the right time. And I think that spirit, the universe, source, God, whatever it is that you want to call it, speaks to us through symbols and synchronicities. And this was one of those moments of synchronicity for me where I realized that I was making decisions from a place of disempowerment. I was making decisions from a place of victim. And I saw these words, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And I hadn't really put anything together because I thought that my life was just happening to me. and I was a victim to it. But then I started to recognize that I'm actually creating my life, my mindset, my decisions, my choices, my energy. It's all creating the life that I have. And although, yes, these things have happened to me, I remember that this is all part of my story. So maybe this is actually happening for me. And how can I find a way to create my life versus being a victim to my circumstances? And then from there, I was like, I need to make different decisions, because right now I'm in this delinquency school where we have to go every morning, walk on a treadmill for 30 minutes, read for an hour, and we only focus on one subject and go to the gym 3 times a week. It was very much disciplined. It was very disciplined, very focused, very much like you need to focus because you can't find any way to distract yourself. And that was what I needed. I didn't recognize that I needed that. And I hated it at the time because I was rebelling against the masculine. I was rebelling against structure. I was rebelling against discipline. I'm like, let me just flow and do what I want to do and not listen to anybody. I could not listen to authority at that time, but I needed it. And so through being in that state of discipline, I started to have a clear mind. I started to feel more productive. Like I can show up and I can do things, and I can recognize that when I focus on something, I can get it done. And I was someone who was in school and people always saw as like a failure because I was in low 50s. Like I did not do good in school. A lot of my classes I struggled in, and it was really challenging for me. And I just kind of took on the role of, well, that means that I'm not good at things. That means that I'm stupid. That means that I'm like, I can't do these things. But being in somewhere that there was actually a genuine care put into me, where someone was like, I can see your potential. You need to show up better. And being really called out on that and having someone that focused on me was so essential for me to learn how strong I really am, but that it's my choices that are dictating who I become. And so having someone that like held me accountable to focus was really what changed me. And I would say this was my first ever coaching experience, because I had teachers who actually saw me beyond what I was currently in. They saw me for my potential, and that was really powerful. So then through that, I was able to actually go back to my first school focused. I got a job. I volunteered at a daycare. I had to take on full classes because if I didn't, I wouldn't have made it to graduation. But then I ended up grinding for about 2 years. And then at this point in time, I would have been probably 17 years old. So 13 to 17, to answer your question, how long I was in that mindset. And then I took on the creator mindset. So I went from the victim to the creator. And being the creator, it was through discipline and through choice and through making hard decisions. And from there, I ended up being able to graduate with honors, which was the
Wow.
first accomplishment of my life that I was so proud of. And it showed me that I do have the power to create my reality through my choices. And that was the moment that really shifted everything for me.
So you said 17 when you graduated?
Uh, 18, technically.
18. Okay. Okay. Man, so going through all of that and exiting high school, how did you take that mindset into, your everyday life? Like what did you decide to jump into then, just being in that like creator mindset?
Yeah. So when I was 17, actually, 17, 18, I was actually dating a guy who ended up being arrested as well, and he had to go to jail. So we went to prison, and that was another moment of like, this is happening to me. I could take on the victim mindset. I've been through this before. I'm losing the man that I love, and this is changing my life. But instead of me letting what happened shift who I become, I'm going to decide to take this as an opportunity to rise anyways. And so right after I graduated, our relationship ended. And as I was in high school, I took a psychology class, but it was a developmental psychology class. It was the first class that I ever felt successful in. And I found such a fascination for the mind and for development and through childhood and all of that. And I was volunteering at a daycare as well. So I decided to go to post-secondary and apply for this early childhood education program, because I'm like, I want to make an impact on kids. I feel like I need to do something to give back to people. I recognize the impact that I had through volunteering. I want to continue to do that. So I ended up taking a certification, getting certified in early childhood education. And then afterwards, I started working as a nanny, and I was a nanny and I was also a waitress. But I felt this sense of unfulfillment. It was like, is this all there is to my life? I'm like getting up, going to work, doing that, going and serving, and in between, I kind of started to find myself. I started to watch videos on like spirituality and mindset and energy and all of these things. And that all happened because I went through this breakup where my boyfriend, who I thought I was going to marry, ended up going to prison. And so that was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, I can choose to continue to fall down this path, or I can choose a different life. And I recognize the power of my decisions through that one quote. Honestly, it was that one quote that changed everything. Like, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And so I started to make decisions from this place of, where do I want to be? I started thinking ahead of like, okay, if I'm making these decisions, where am I going to find myself? Probably not in the place that I want to be. So then I started to look and create the idea of, what is my future self like? Like, how do I envision her? What does she look like? How does she take care of herself? What does she do? And I fell into fitness and I started working out just at home. Like, I was working out at home, finally found the confidence to go to the gym, and I gained such a passion for it. I was able to build and create my body, and that was powerful for me because I had such insecurities and body image issues that every time I looked in the mirror, self-criticism, judgment, really hard on myself. And that affected my mental health, my self-image, the way that I showed up in the world. So to recognize that I can create my body and I can build my body, that was huge for me. So
I was going to ask, how did you like go through life in the beginning where, or how did you develop the mindset to where you were like, maybe body shaming yourself and, feeling like, did you experience bullying because of that, like back in high school?
my bullying wasn't necessarily because of that. It was more so, I think the reasons that I was bullied was because I was kind of a little brat, honestly. I was a brat in high school. I didn't take care of myself. I hung out with a lot of boys. And I think that because of that, I triggered a lot of the girls that I was in high school with, and I brought up jealousy. And so their way of dealing with that was through hurting me. And that was something that was a mirror of both of us, right? I'm mirroring back to them and they're mirroring back to me. What can we work on of healing within ourselves? And obviously being in high school, we're not aware of those things too. So it was just a constant coming at each other, like, let's be catty young girls. Like, I was beat up quite a few times too, growing up too, like actually like physically as well. And that was mainly just because I was surrounding myself with people who were also abandoning themselves, people who were also drinking a lot, people who were also in abusive relationships. And just the people I was surrounding myself with were a reflection of what I believed about myself too. So once I was able to shift out of that, I was able to recognize that where I'm at is no longer a reflection of who I want to be surrounding myself with. And once I started working out, I had little to no friends. Like, I had no friends at this point in time. And I'm like, I don't feel like I belong here anymore. And I was about 19 years old when my dad and my two younger sisters and we went on a road trip to British Columbia. So I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It's about 10 hours from BC, and we went on a road trip in this like crappy old motorhome. And it was just after, like, just the summer after I had finished my certification. I was working, everything. And through coming here now, obviously we can tell what happened, but I fell in love with the mountains. We went on so many different adventures through being here, and just being in nature and being in the environment and being around new people who saw life in a totally different way was so beautiful for me. I had gone on the most adventurous experiences that I ever had before, and it was this sense of aliveness that started to come to life in me. I had been doing yoga and I had been working out and eating so good and taking care of my body, and my energy had completely shifted. And so imagine going from being numb and suppressing yourself and pushing everything down to feeling like completely dissociated and disconnected, to feeling everything, to feeling the vibration, to feeling the energy, to feeling the joy, to feeling the bliss. And so I come here and I'm like smelling the air and just feeling this like, wow, this is where I belong.
That's
And
awesome.
it was the most beautiful thing. And kind of like we were talking about earlier is, you go on vacation somewhere, you fall in love with the place, you don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's what happened
So
to me.
I'm
I'm relating to you.
yeah. So I'm 19 years old being like, I do not want to go back to Saskatchewan. I do not want to go back to Saskatchewan. There's nothing there for me anymore. I have a job, but I don't really love my job. And so I was on the lake here doing this paddleboard yoga and laying there in Shavasana, just in this meditation state and feeling such joy like emanating through my body. I had not known anything about manifestation at this time, but the woman who was facilitating this experience said, I want you to think about if you could have and create anything in your life, what would you want? My immediate thought was, I would just want to stay here. I just want to stay in British Columbia. I just want to stay in this town called Invermere. And I just thought about that and like went through the ideas of like how good I felt being here and how empowered I felt and how alive I felt. And so when I got out of the lake, my dad and the friend that we were staying with here, they were like, Taylor, we have a proposal for you. So we've recognized how much you love this place. And in a month, we'll have our wedding anniversary. We'd love to invite you to stay with us for room and board in exchange for doing some work on the farm. I was like, are you kidding? Yes, of course. So that was the first moment of like immediate manifestation that I had had.
That's intense. So were you entered in like a workshop right there where you were? Because you said there was a
A
lady.
workshop?
Yeah, you said there was a lady facilitating like a meditation or.
Yeah, so this was like so we did paddleboard yoga on one of the lakes and she was guiding the whole experience for us. And then once you finish the yoga, you lay in shavasana and she had just cued us to think about, you know, feeling the feelings of gratitude and amplifying that into what you desire. And I think the combination of the joy, the gratitude, and the desire all together, I believe that the universe was like, this is where you belong. This is where you're meant to be right now. And so I was given the opportunity to choose that. And so even though it was entirely uncertain, it means me moving away on my own, moving 10 hours away from my family, not having a job, not having a way to make money, but feeling so much joy here that I'm like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to figure it out along the way. So I packed up my car with the few clothes that I had and I moved into a motorhome that was parked in their backyard. I worked on their farm with goats and chickens and like
How
just
engaging.
gardening and everything. Yeah. And so I got a job serving. A few weeks later, I got a job at the gym. And then I ended up working and just getting into this new rhythm of what I have going on for my life. And the month came up where they said, well, you could like it's getting cold basically at this point in time. I'm in Canada, usually around August, September, it starts to get cold. So I'm sleeping in a motorhome and I'm freezing at this point in time. So I'm like, I don't want to leave, but I know that I can't sleep in this motorhome forever. So I need to find a place to rent. But the thing about this valley where I live is that there's not a lot of rentals available. So I was like, what do I do now? And so I had made friends with this amazing guy that I had met through the gym and he offered me a room to rent off of him. And so I'm like, yes, I will do that. Absolutely, I will do that. So I rented a room off of him for about 3 months. I started getting a full-time job at the gym. And then we ended up getting into a relationship together. And we were together for about 3 years. We had a beautiful friendship, beautiful relationship. I ended up getting promotions at the gym, but I got to this point of feeling like there's something more and I need to do something more. And I was kind of in this point of like just repeating day in, day out, going through my life. And I had fallen back into a little bit of drinking. And that is the thing for me that is a vice that is not self-serving. And so I started to feel so out of alignment again that I'm like, there's something off and there's something wrong. And so some significant changes needed to be made. So my relationship ended and I moved out on my own. I got my personal training certification. I started working with clients and I was like helping people with their bodies. But at the same time, I was working so much on myself because I had just gone through a breakup that I got into everything related to life coaching and healing and heartbreak and all of that. So I was in the midst of doing my self work, and I started to apply the information to my fitness clients and seeing what profound and powerful transformations that they were experiencing in combination with their bodies. And I was recognizing that this is so much more than just fitness. This is everything in combination. And so I'm like, I know the value of working on your body, but I also know the value of working on your mind. And so it was about 6 months into me being a personal trainer that I'm like, I need to be a life coach. I heard about life coaching, but I didn't know it was a thing. People growing up told me, like, once I started to take better care of myself, they're like, you should be a life coach. Because I would be the person at the parties, like giving these motivational speeches and stuff like that, where I'm talking about mindset and energy and all of the things. So I think that there were these little downloads and little intuitive synchronicities and intuitive nudges and synchronicities that would happen along the way, where the universe is like, this is the direction that you're going in. And people would say these things.
Did you
And so
believe in yourself
anyways,
at that time?
yeah. What was that? Sorry?
Did you believe in yourself at that time when people would tell you those things?
I'm like, what is a life coach? I'm not good enough to be a life coach. That's like a professional thing. I have no experience. I couldn't be a life coach. That was my thought.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I didn't have any confidence in myself to be a life coach. I had no idea how to become a life coach. And I knew that I had this passion and this desire and this inner fire towards helping people, because I knew what it was like to be in such a position of darkness and to feel at rock bottom and to have to pull myself out of it, that I'm like, I wish I could make that easier on other people. I want to make that easier on people who are in these positions of struggle, and to see them for their strength, because that's what I needed at that time. I needed someone to see me and believe in me, because I did not have any belief in myself. And I grew up in an environment where there wasn't a lot of like, yeah, I believe in you. Like my mom didn't
Like
believe in me. My
encouragement?
dad didn't believe in me.
Like encouragement, you didn't really have that?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't have a lot of that. My mom had to drag me to class a few times. Like my mom almost put me in juvie.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. My mom did not believe in me. And my dad was not a huge part of the picture either. And my dad was in his own struggle, like trying to figure out his way after prison. And so it was like, this is not, no one believes in me, and I could choose to not believe in myself too, and I did for quite some time. It wasn't up until the point where I had these teachers and these mentors who were like, you have something, but you're not seeing it inside of yourself. And to have them pull that out of me, it activated me. And I think that that was why this was part of my path, was because now I'm in a position where I see people for their potential and I activate it in them and I invite them to step into it. And so I think that everything that I went through in my life was training for that. And the people that saw me, I wouldn't be who I am without them. And I think that there's such an importance of having someone who does see you and believe in you, because once I went through my breakup, this was at the beginning of 2019 at this point in time. So I was about 21 years old, and 21 or 22, something around there. And I hired my first life coach, who actually saw me and accepted me and let me be all of me in my self-judgment and my shame and my embarrassment and my mistakes, and just said, you're allowed to be all of you. And I accept you for who you are. And I had never had that before. And I was so hard on myself and so feeling like I had made so many mistakes, that who would ever listen to me? And I recognized that me making the decisions were part of my experience that I needed. And so having them to see me and to believe in me and to invite me into the possibility was what allowed me to have that belief. So I borrowed belief from people, but I paid for it too.
Yeah, yeah.
I paid for it and I experienced it. I'm like, if you see me and you believe in me, amazing. My first ever life coach was someone who I'm still friends with to this day. And it was the biggest, most challenging experience of my life to invest into myself, because I was working a full-time job. I was barely making any money. I was my first time ever living on my own. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent, but I remember reading the book, You Are a Badass at Making Money. If you haven't read it, it's incredible. And
I'll have to look it up after this.
yeah, it's really good. So the You Are a Badass book by Jen Sincero, that was one of the ones where I first heard about life coaching. And then I was like, oh, this is so fascinating, like the power of our thoughts. And I started to apply it to my life and apply the concepts. And then I was in a position where I had struggled with money for quite some time. And I ended up learning how to manifest money. So I'm like, I'm going to take this money that I manifested and put it into myself, to put it into my growth. And so I invested into masterminds and certifications and courses and all of these things to just like fuel my development, because I remember that like the best investment that we can make is in our knowledge, because there's no dollar value on that. That is like the most valuable thing that we can have, because if you took everything away, what do you have? You have your brain, and that's
True.
it. So with your brain, you have knowledge and you can create from your knowledge. So if someone were to strip everything away from what I have now, I could recreate everything that I created, because I know how, because I learned the tools, I learned the knowledge, I learned the wisdom. And so I started to just invest into my mind, into my mind, into my mind. And I recognized like how much me giving back to myself was giving back to others. And I was now in this position where I was working a full-time job at the gym, but I also had a coaching business on the side. And this was fueling me in the ways that I knew that I needed. And this was the feeling that I was waiting for, was this, wow, like a sense of aliveness and purpose and giving back and service. And that's more than anything what I wanted. This position in the gym, I was, operations supervisor. There was a promotion right ahead of me. I had benefits. I had all the things. And this was a sense of comfort and stability. But I knew I needed to quit. So I
How
gave
did
in my
you know? You just
resignation.
felt it?
I just felt it. I thought about, okay, I have these two pathways, and this is the thing. I come to these forks in the road constantly. It's like, what are you going to choose, Tay? What are you going to choose? And I think we come up to these events that we can always choose comfort and certainty, or we can choose growth and uncertainty. And I choose the growth and uncertainty every single time. And it's brought me to this sense of how powerful I am at creating. And so I quit my job. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did, not only because I loved my job, but also because it was a huge part of my identity. And my ego many, many times told me how much easier it would be to stay, and how, like, there's this sense of certainty and just it's stable, right?
Now,
People did not want me to quit my job.
especially with benefits, like most people would be like, hey, I need to stay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can definitely see that for sure.
Yeah. You have your retirement savings, you have your benefits, you have your certain income, all of it. I let it go, and I decided to bet on myself and bet on my business, because I thought about, well, where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? Do I want to be sitting in an office and, repeating a pattern? I don't. I want to be traveling. I want to be giving back. I want to be having this sense of freedom, even if that requires me to have uncertainty for a while. And so I quit my job, and about a month later, the place that I was renting, they told me, it was actually, I went to Mexico right after I quit my job. This was my celebration that I had. I'm like, I'm going to go to Mexico. I have my business. I'm like free. I can do the thing. And as I'm in Mexico, my landlords text me and they say, hey, the lease is coming up. We're going to turn our space into an Airbnb and we're going to move into your rental unit. I was like, fuck, where am I going to live now? And so that was a huge moment of, oh my God, okay, I'm in Mexico. I just started my business. I don't have a job anymore. What am I going to do? So that was a huge moment for me.
What did they do? Give you like a 30-day notice?
Yeah, it was about 30 days.
Oh, wow. So not only did you not have security in your job, you're just like, now what? Now I got to move.
Yep. No job security, no home security, no nothing. All the foundations that I just had, gone. And so that was a moment where I'm like, okay, I have to find out what I'm going to do, and I'm going to try to figure it out. So I had about a month. And at this point in time, it was about coming up on my 23rd birthday. And so I remember my birthday, my mom and my best friend, I was sitting there, and like we went on this amazing adventure. Like British Columbia is absolutely incredible. And there's so many mountains and lakes and hikes and everything. So we went on a hike, And I remember crying on my birthday. This has happened almost every single birthday since I turned 19, because it's an epiphany moment for me where I'm realizing like everything's changing. I have a whole nother year ahead of me. And so my birthday, 2 days later, I moved back home because I did not know where I was going to go. There was no rentals available in the town that I was living, and I had no idea where I wanted to move. So I moved back home into the office, slept on an air mattress, had all my stuff in storage. I moved there with my 2 cats and lived with my family. And at this point in time, I had just transitioned to life coaching. I had just decided that I'm going to let go of the fitness coaching stability and I'm going to transition to life coaching too. I started a podcast, and I started a mastermind too. And through that, I was able to have the support of someone believing in me, even in my darkness, even in my mess, even in the chaos that I had. And I'd also just gone through a breakup. Again, I had a very short issue-based relationship, I'm going to call it. One of those ones where you're triggered, every single part of you is triggered. They're very short, very deep, very fast, and very emotional. And so I had one of those. That ended. So I was healing my heartbreak, all of this happening at the same time. And simultaneously, while I was also living at home, we found out my dad had to go back to prison. And so it was all of these things happening all at the same time. And I was so emotionally overwhelmed. But it brought me back to spirituality. And so I was in a mastermind that was really bringing me back home to spirituality and trust. And so I reconnected to my intuition, to my inner source, and to my angels. And I started to believe in something bigger than myself. And again, that mantra, this struggle is part of your story, kept moving me forward. I'm like, I'm going to tell this story one day. I'm going to help someone through something similar. And this is just part of my purpose. And so how can I find the light, even in my darkness, even in the pain, even in the uncertainty? I'm just going to go with it. And so I lived at home for about 3 months, kept trying to find a place to live. Nothing right. I can't stay in the city. I don't want to live here anymore. Try to go to a different one. Doesn't feel right. And so on a road trip, I ended up coming back through Invermere, where I currently live, meeting up with my best friend and just being like, this is where you need to be. I don't have any stability. I don't have any support right now, but I need to be here. So my friend let me rent a room off of him. And I stayed there for about 3 months and was in the process of building my business. But at this point in time, I did not have much money coming in. I didn't have enough to pay rent. I didn't have enough to pay any of my bills. And I had a maxed out credit card and a $900 phone bill from going to Mexico. So I'm drowning in debt at this point in time. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to figure my way out of this. And so I started to dive into things like money mindset, like really diving into that money mindset again. And I had a huge shift that I was relying on men. I was relying on men in order to support me. And so I'm like, oh my God, I have this subconscious belief that there's always going to be a man that's there to save me. I need to let that go. I need to take sole responsibility for myself and to stop waiting and stop being the princess, essentially, like stop waiting for someone to save me. And the reason why this happened was because I had always been subconsciously believing that my dad will always be there. And even if my dad's not physically there, he's going to be there. But my dad's in jail right now. He ain't going to save me. And so I had that shift. The next day I got a credit card raise, so I was able to pay my phone bill. I ended up signing 2 clients that week too. And I was like, I need to take this energy and I need to use it towards something new. So I found an apartment, and it was way more than what I was making, but I'm like, I know that I have this ability to expand into possibility. I have this potential. I know the power of manifestation. I know the power of embodying who you want to be and making decisions from that place. So I decided to apply for this place, and I ended up getting it. And it ended up being exactly what I wanted. And I moved in, and then it was the beginning of 2020 at this point in time. Yeah, 2020. So beginning of 2020, I was, just enough to pay my bills. I'm like, okay, I can pay rent. I've got all these things. I've got certifications, all of this. I'm good, but I feel like there's more. And so I ended up being in between. Do I hire a business coach that someone's going to help me learn strategies and make money? or do I do self-work on myself? And so I was in between the two of them. I had two options, and I ended up deciding to go into a program that was solely based on self-work. And it was a program that was a $10,000 investment. I'd never made $10,000 before. I was barely making like $3,000 in my business, and the first payment was about $2,000. And so intuitively, I knew that this was the right thing for me. I just had no idea how I was going to pay for it. And so I decided to take out a loan. And so I took out a loan, made the first payment, and I'm like, this gives me the fuel in order to create the money. I have to now. There's no other option. And then from there, I was able to increase my energy and expand into a whole new version of me that I ended up having my first ever $10,000 month. And then from then,
Wow.
it's just been upward and onward. And I ended up getting my certification in breath work. I ended up going into a lot of embodiment. I ended up becoming a business coach and helping life coaches and helping them expand their business and helping them heal. And it's been a year, and my business tripled my income. 2020, I made over $100,000, and I have been just coasting beautifully ever since. And that is me now. And I'm also in a position now where I'm about to move. Similar position, but the way I'm approaching it is very different.
That is awesome to hear, honestly. I mean, just hearing the progression, hearing the decisions, that takes me to a few things that I'm actually thinking about. Number one, um, one thing I want to bring up is you talked about the subconscious belief of
Yeah.
uh, having somebody there to save you. Did you mean that like you were searching for that in a relationship? Is that why you feel like you might have been going through those different relationships at that time?
Yeah, I feel like I had always been waiting for, I felt like men gave me this sense of stability. And if I had a man in my life, I'm stable and I'm good and I'm safe. And that stemmed from right before my dad went away, everything was stable and everything was good. But as soon as my dad went away, instability. My mom doesn't have a job. We don't have money. There's stress. There's chaos. And so I developed that belief at that point in time and carried it with me all the way throughout my journey until the point that I recognized that's where it stemmed from. And I was able to shift it. And once that belief shifted, everything around me changed.
Wow. And you say, did you get there like, the last couple of years? Do you feel like you developed that like new belief in yourself?
Develop. Oh God, yeah. I think that it took a decision of this is not what I'm choosing anymore. And then from there, continually deciding again and again and again, what is the story that I want to tell myself? Which was, I am the sole creator of my reality and I don't need anyone to save me. And I can create on my own. And then I recognized that my inner masculine was the part of me that was very wounded, and I wasn't allowing myself to heal that energy. So once I started to heal my own inner masculine, then I had this sense of I can support myself was essentially what it came down to. Is my internet cutting out?
In and out, but it's okay. I could still hear you perfectly fine. Um,
Okay.
so in going through that, the next thing I wanted to bring up was, and it goes along with your whole story, really, the ability to make decisions. Because in the moment, like, I know that you're having these epiphanies, and you're kind of explaining, you knew what you needed to do, and then you eventually made the decision. In one of your Instagram posts, I think I commented recently, the stories at least, you were talking about decision making. This was like, I think 2 or 3 days ago. And I was like, wow, you're so on point with that. When you're not making a decision, you're kind of like um, in this crossroad in essentially, but like by not making a decision, you're prolonging everything, and you're falling back and forth, and you're just kind of like in this limbo state. And so
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to bring that up because that's one thing that stuck, and I was at least able to resonate with me personally, because in a few of my relationships, I feel like I was always very disciplined. I was always very like, in alignment. And then, being exposed to different mindsets, different people, you kind of almost subconsciously develop that mindset as well. So I found myself in disbelief of my own ability to make a decision, to where I would like is that a right move? And I would
Mm.
just second guess myself often. So like I was able to resonate with what you were saying. And I actually wanted to bring that up because in your story, you know, when did you come down to the point where you kind of knew that, like, if you were stuck? Because I know that it sounds like you're making these decisions quickly, but
No.
yeah, but I know for you, like, it's probably very different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was stuck so many times. And that's exactly what it is. It's like you're in this crossroads and you're stuck because when we're not making a decision, we're in indecision. And when we're in indecision, nothing changes, right? And that's why people get stuck, is because they're not making decisions, they're not making choices, they're not choosing path A or path B or path C, or it doesn't really matter the path because there's no wrong choice. But the longer we wait, the longer it takes. And I think that sometimes we need to allow that time to actually marinate on our decisions. But then the problem is that we jump up into our head and our ego is trying to figure out, well, is this the right thing? Is this safe? Is this good? Is this going to be like, oh, I don't know. And then we start to second guess ourselves. Whereas if we feel that intuitive, like, yes, you either get a yes or you get a no, and then you make the decision based on that feeling. Our intuition speaks very subtly. It's the first feeling that we get where it's either a hell yes or it's a hell no. And when we listen to that feeling, we follow the path of our authentic alignment. But when we get into our heads, that's when ego takes over.
That's powerful. Yeah. And like I said, I wanted to bring that up because I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, I feel like a lot of people are probably in indecision that feel stuck. I know I was. And it's like an everyday thing. It's like it's something that you're not always maybe aware of, but you encounter decisions all day long. You have to make decisions all day long. And I think that that's extremely powerful. And one thing I wanted to ask, so you talked a lot about also energy, spirituality. That's right up my alley. I feel like, you know, over the years, I find when you're kind of like in that moment of isolation, you're kind of like discovering yourself naturally. I feel like that is like a calling in a way, you know. um, when did you for yourself find out that you were able to, I mean, you mentioned it early on, number one, with your
Mhm.
mother. You mentioned that you were empathetic and you felt that something was wrong. So from those moments, like throughout your life, have you always been able to identify what you feel from others and the energy, like in the rooms or things like that?
That's a beautiful question. It's changed for me throughout my life. And I think that when I was suppressing my emotions, like the depth of my emotions through things like alcohol, I wasn't in tune with my gifts. But once I created this space to feel the depth of my pain and my emotions and all of those things, I had this space to receive all of my spiritual gifts at the same time. And I think that what I really learned, especially over the last few years, is that we all have the capacity to do that. But to do those things, we have to transmute a lot of the energy that is trapped inside of our bodies from past experiences too. And so it comes down to an unraveling and letting go and releasing and clearing. Because when we do that, we can actually hear and listen. And so there's spiritual gifts of, there's feeling, like you're feeling someone's energy, you're feeling it and experiencing it. There's knowing, where you just get these intuitive knowing hits, whether it come through like it's just a feeling. It's just this, I know this, and this is what it is. And we also have hearing. That's one of the ones that's really strong for me, especially if my mind is clear, is I will hear either sentences or thoughts. They're not even thoughts, they're sentences. They're just these words that come through me. And also seeing. So some people will see energies and auras and visuals, especially when they're meditating, but that requires us to lean into trust and to let go of fear. And it's flowed throughout my life, depending on whether or not I'm listening to my ego and my stories and my conditioning, or if I'm leaning into this sense of faith in the unseen. And I think that there's this magic that's available within all of us, but it comes down to whether or not we're giving it the space to come through.
That makes total sense. You know, just bringing up those gifts, I think everybody does have those. I've encountered many individuals throughout my life that have seen auras, and that this time in my life, I didn't really know, you know, what that meant. Just brief story. I was going into like a barbershop to get a haircut when I was living in San Diego. First time I had ever gone into this particular, you know, location. And I go and I see one of the gentlemen, his name was TJ. And, he starts cutting my hair. 3 months later, he tells me, from the moment that you walked in, I knew that you were like a solid person. I never questioned you. It was so weird that he was telling me this. And he's like, you have like this aura about you. And I was
Mm.
like, I just thought it was kind of interesting that he was saying these things. And then he's like, yeah, my whole family like has that ability. Like we can see this. And so I started like digging into that. Like I started looking that up, and I was like kind of dumbfounded about the whole, about that whole like ability. And so like I said, I believe that everybody has that. For myself personally, I feel like over the years I've been able to actually be in more like in alignment with who I am, to where I can
Mm.
pick up on certain energies around people, bad vibes, if you will,
Totally.
in the workplace, just different things, to where I know that like, okay, you're saying one thing, but I feel something totally different than what you're saying. And,
Mhm.
I think everybody, like I said, everybody has that, but in a way we can always discount that, like most people, I feel like they don't, not that they don't believe it, but they're unaware of that natural ability. Another thing I wanted to ask you, I mentioned this, a couple of days ago.
Mhm.
So, in doing your line of work, being a life coach and dealing with multiple different clients, I would imagine a day, a week, how is it that you can like basically recharge your own energy and not take on what like they're kind of like unraveling on you? Because I know that in that you're hearing their story, you're hearing their struggles. I mean, you openly talk about it, in your posts and on Instagram. But how do you remain in tune and in alignment with yourself without carrying on that energy that they disclose to you?
Yeah, I love that question. It's such an important one because it not only applies to being a coach with a client, but in any relationship and energy exchange that we're having is we're all very empathetic in our nature. We feel from other people and we can experience what they're experiencing, but it's a matter of whether or not we're taking it on for them or if we're allowing ourselves to feel it with them. And so that I think is a huge difference is for me, it came down to like recognizing that we're all mirrors of each other and that no one of us is more responsible than another one. Even if I'm a coach, even if I'm holding space for someone, I'm holding space for them. And one of my mentors had given me this beautiful metaphor that I carry with me to this day is that when you're holding space, you get to imagine yourself as the glass, right? As the glass of water, for example, you are holding space for them to be all of them. So you can hold the water inside, but the truth is that it's not absorbing into you. You can pour it out, you can let it go. You just allow that space to be there without letting it become the glass. And that was really powerful for me because I knew that I didn't need to take it on for them. I could hold it for them, but I don't need to carry it for them. And so one of the mantras that I use anytime that I'm in a space where someone's sharing something with me and I start to feel the heaviness or the emotion or the energy of it is I just say, this isn't mine. This isn't mine. And just simply that has allowed me to let it go. And I would say that to release it. But in order to hold space for someone else, first we have to be able to hold space for ourselves. And I think that that has come through practice and through developing the skill of doing that. And I would say over the last 3 years, it's been getting progressively better. But in the beginning, I struggled with it a lot. I hit burnout probably 4 or 5 times in my first year of business. And I was constantly exhausted because my heart was so open that it was like I was giving so much energy, but I wasn't receiving enough. And so I think that there's this importance of balance between, you know, giving back and also giving to ourselves. And this is why self-care as a service provider and as an empathetic person and just a human in general is so essential. And it's not even selfish because it's actually more selfish for us to continuously be bypassing ourselves because we're giving from empty. And so I like to imagine myself Like you could say like a glass of water or like a battery. Like I want to give from this place of fullness. So what fills me up? What recharges me? And then learning what lights you up and what sparks your joy and what gives back to you. And I think that's unique and different for every single one of us. But the more energized we are, the more we're able to activate other people. And that comes through us knowing ourselves and having a self-awareness of what drains me, what like exhausts me, what pulls me down, and what uplifts me, what energizes me, what activates me on a bigger level, and then going more towards that, because what activates some people will drain others. And so once we have this awareness of who we are and what aligns with us, we can make decisions that are more in alignment. And so one of the exercises that I actually did quite a while ago and I give to all my clients is taking an inventory of your day, like every single thing that you do from the moment you wake up to the moment that you fall asleep. But you're going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 to discover your average amount of alignment. And so 1 being like, this is tiring, this is exhausting, this is dreading for me. 10 being like, I feel so good when I'm doing this. I feel so good after I'm doing this. And I look forward to doing this. And you're going to rate everything that you do in your day, just an average day. And then from there, you are able to recognize what your percentage is. So you'll add up all the numbers, figure out what your percentage is, and then recognize like, okay, where in my life am I leaking energy? Because if anything's underneath a 5, it's draining you. Can you delegate it? Can you let it go? Can you, maybe put it off for a while? Like, do you actually have to be doing that? Because everything's a choice, and we can choose the things that drain us, or we can choose the things that activate us. And the more that we can bring in those things that are like 5 to 10 that energize us, the more energy we're going to have, the more excited we're going to be to give back. And then we'll be coming from this place of overflow and abundance versus scarcity and exhaustion. And I think that comes through awareness of yourself and figuring out what practices activate you. Like I could tell you my whole morning routine and my evening routine and all the things that I do, but that's my blueprint, and my blueprint is unique to me, just as yours is unique to you. So I think that for us, and like this is the practice that I do with all my clients too, is like we get to figure out who you are. What's your energy? How does it come in? Where does it go? And then once you know that, then you can live in your alignment.
That's powerful that you're saying that. And you're making me relive some of my old routines where I felt drained at like jobs and things like that. Because from the moment you wake up, you're like, dang, okay, I got to get ready. I got to do that. I got to do this. I got that appointment over here. I got this, that, the third. At least that's how my life was for a short period of time.
Totally.
And my life felt drained. Whereas now, I get to kind of like create my own schedule, as of 2020, very, very similar to yourself. I had to go in business for myself. It wasn't really a choice. And now, I mean, this last year and a half, I've been able to actually choose things that I wanted to do, different hobbies, different things that interest me that I never, quote unquote, had time for.
Wow.
But I've never done what you're saying to where you're rating different tasks, different things that you have to do. I've never done that. And I think I'm going to actually try that out, because it'd be interesting to know, okay, I didn't like doing that today. I didn't like, just to see where I'm at on a daily basis. I think that that's super important. Is that something that you do, you said, with all of your clients?
I do. And I actually have that as a freebie on my website. It's called Your Average Amount of Alignment. So you can go through the practice there. But that's one of the things that I found, like where your energy leakages are, because if you're leaking energy, it's going to go away. And it's like, well, why would I be doing all the things that exhaust me when I could do all the things that activate me? We're so unique and so perfect, and there's a perfection to the way that people are and how we fit together. Like it's a perfect puzzle. But the thing is that we think we need to be a certain way, or we need to do a certain task, even if it's hard and even if it's out of alignment, but we force ourselves to do it and we exhaust ourselves along the way. And then we're actually taking away from someone else being in that position who would fucking love it. And that's the thing. It's like there's someone who has my old job who is so excellent at it, who's so good at it, where I was like dreading it. So now I'm in a position where I'm so lit up to be doing what I'm doing. And there's always more than enough room for everybody to do exactly what they're meant to be doing. It's just a matter of us getting beyond the limits of our mind and saying like, the only thing that's getting in my way is myself and my ego. And if I allowed myself to let that go, who would I be and what would I actually want to be doing with my days and with my energy? Like, we don't need to suffer and we don't need to struggle.
Seriously. I love that you said that there's more than enough for everybody to go around. And I like what I think of is a quote. It's not really actually a quote, but it's, everybody's version of success is different from each
Mm-hmm.
other. And success for you is different than obviously from my own success, my own definition of it, and everybody else. So there's more than enough abundance. There's more than enough success for everybody to get to that level. But it is true, when you kind of hold on to that, it can put you in a state of mind that you kind of don't really want to be in. One thing I wanted to ask as well. So for those that maybe have experienced what you were going through, in the past with maybe not fitting in and things like that, how did you decide, like, it comes down to like your friends, like you had said, like you kind of had to let go of like different friend groups, different things like that. Did you ever have that backlash to where they didn't believe in you, or they didn't like, did you just totally disassociate?
No, I had some pretty, I think letting go is always hard, no matter what. I think letting go of people that you care about is really, really challenging. And I always go by, like, people are either going to grow with you, or I'm either going to grow with you or without you, but I can't stop my growth for you. And we can invite people into growing with us, but if they're not willing to, they won't. And that's okay, because that quote simply, people are meant to be in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and they may agree with you or they may not. But the thing is that even if we're not meant to be in each other's lives, that doesn't mean that I can't still love you and respect you. And I've learned that even in the completion, I call it a completion because it's just like, that is the end of our friendship, or that's the end of our relationship, and that's okay.
Cycle.
Yeah, yeah, it's a completion, and I can still see you and honor you, and it doesn't need to be a painful breakup. It doesn't need to be something that we hate each other after, because we've loved each other at some point in time. And I think that I've had both sides. I've had friendships where they didn't believe in themselves, so they couldn't believe in me. And I've also had people who believed so much in themselves that they believe in me even more. And so I think that our friendships are always a mirror reflection of us. So whatever we're allowing, we're either allowing that within ourselves or we're letting that exist within our lives. So that comes down to conversations about boundaries, and that comes down to conversations about expectations and needs and desires and wants. And if it's not a fit, that's okay. I think that it's important to not expect someone to be everything for you, especially in romantic relationships, because we all have different wants and needs, and sometimes those will align. You might have 10 needs and 10 desires, but maybe only 5 of them are going to align with someone. That doesn't mean that you can't be in their lives. It's just a matter of, okay, are we equally giving back to each other? Are we able to support each other and grow together? Or is it like someone's dragging you down as you're wanting to move forward? And I think that that's an important thing to reflect on, because if you're surrounding yourself with people who are pulling you down, you are inevitably going to be pulled down with them. That quote, like, you're a combination of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, is so true, because I recognize how, like, we are a community-based species. No matter what, we're meant to be in community, we're meant to be in connection, we're meant to be in relationships, and relationships are always reflections of us, and they can be mirrors for our growth, where they're triggering and they're like, oh God, I need to grow. Or they can be mirror reflections of where we're not growing and what we're standing for and what we're settling for. And so I was saying this a little while ago. I was talking about how incredible my friendships are. Like, my core group of friends now, I'm in awe with them because they're doing amazing things with their lives, and they are powerful and they're successful and they're happy and they're making an impact and they're doing amazing things. And one of my friends said, it's because you are doing those things. It's because you've attracted these people into your life. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about that, because I was settling for friendships who were stagnating me, and I had to let those go in order for me to grow. That doesn't mean I don't care about those people, because I do. They're just not directly in my life. And I think that we can change the dynamic and how much we're energetically surrounding ourselves with people, because no matter what, we are going to be influenced on an energetic, on a subconscious, on a spiritual, and cognitive, like consciously cognitive level as well. So we see these things, it's like monkey see, monkey do, no matter what, we're going to be doing it.
That's 100% true. It makes me think of a video that I saw about, I think it's like the crabs. When one crab is trying to get out of the basket, all of the other ones are trying to like drag it down. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it was like backed by somebody's voice. It was like a very inspirational person talking, giving that example, and the video is playing. And that's what I think of, when people try to drag you down. Now, I want to get into one thing. I want to talk about advice. What's some advice that you would give for somebody that's maybe at that position to where they're in a crossroads, they're trying to discover what their purpose or their potential is? What is something that you would tell, anybody in that position that you would talk to, maybe in a coaching session, like right away?
I would say that if you're at a crossroads, there's no wrong decision. There's just a decision. And through that decision, you will learn. You will learn what you love. You will learn what you don't love. You will learn more about yourself through the experience. And that every single decision is a step in your success. And as long as you're moving forward, you're going to do amazing. And so part of it all is really coming down to who are you and what lights you up. And you learn that through making decisions. You learn that through your experiences. And I think that everything combines together. But the most important thing is to just make the decisions and to trust yourself along the way. And we learn how to trust ourselves through making the decisions that actually feel good. And so the more awareness that we can bring to our limiting beliefs, to our conditioning, to our fears and our triggers and our traumas, that's going to help us differentiate between where we're making our decisions from. Is it from a place of fear and ego, or is it from a place of soul and intuition? Once we can differentiate those two, you can make empowered decisions. And you learn how to trust your body on a deep soul level. You learn how to trust your intuition. And then that's how you live in alignment. And as long as you're in alignment with yourself, you are on purpose. Your purpose is you being the most expressed version of you. It's not something that we're doing. It's not a career. It's nothing. It's you being you, because your energy in alignment activates people. It energizes people. It brings them to their soul expression. So we think about it from the perspective of the day that you are having a really great day. You woke up, you're like feeling good. You go and you smile at someone, you activate the light in them. They go activate a light in someone else. They go activate a light in someone else. Next thing you know, it's like the whole world is lit up, all because you felt good. And so we're responsible for the energy that we create and the decisions that we make. So as long as we're making decisions that are aligned with joy, with happiness, with our own feeling good, we're doing good for the world. And that is the purpose of all of us being here, is us feeling good and showing others how to feel good too. Doesn't matter what the expression of that is.
I like to say, be the light.
Be the light.
Be the light.
Yeah. Be the light. Be the light.
That's all we can do. I think that's all what we're here for, like you said. Now this question has had me wanting you just to describe it. You'd said it in your Instagram story the other day. You talked about Aries season and the energy, and I felt everything that you were saying 100%. I just can't put it in words because it's tough for me to do that, but I feel like you were in tune, you were in alignment, and you were just speaking from the heart. And I was like, wow, I resonate with what she's saying. So how would you say that, like what this season is and what that energy, what the energy people are feeling is right now? I think everybody's feeling that, but they just, they think it's like, hey, I'm feeling good, which is true. But it's just like the season.
The inner fire. So not only are we like in spring now, which is incredible, like there's always the energy that shifts with us coming into spring, but like every month we shift into a new season astrologically, right? So we were just in Pisces season. Pisces is very like watery, very emotional, very flowy, very just like more introspective than anything. And so it's very based in community and relationships and healing and all of that. Whereas Aries is the fire, it's the ram, it's the productive, it's getting stuff done, it's moving forward, it's taking initiative. I'm not an astrologer, so don't take my word for this. This is my own experience. But we shift every single month on, I believe it's around the 21st, sometimes like within that date range. So we feel energetically, we feel those shifts. And so right now we're in a season of progression of that inner fire. So there's all the different elements. We have the earth signs, the water signs, the fire signs, and the air signs. And so your zodiac sign will be a reflection of that. But simultaneously, as we go throughout the year, we shift through each sign. And then you'll also feel the energy of that season of the sign that we're in at that time.
I totally agree with you. Like this, I feel like I did do a lot of reflecting this last month.
Yeah.
A lot of healing, a lot of different things. Now I kind of want to give this time to you to, just open up the platform. Is there anything that you want to discuss that's just, in your heart calling you to, or anything you feel compelled to share with any of the audience?
I think really what it just comes down to is kind of based on the conversation that we've had, which is how important it is to surround ourselves with people who see us and who believe in us and who actually genuinely care for us, and how they will always be a reflection of who we become. And you are always becoming more and you're always becoming better. And so it's okay and it's so safe to release and to let go of the things that are holding you back, even if that's just a thought or a belief or a fear, and that we're made to move forward. And sometimes growth is painful and sometimes it's uncertain, but we're always going to be going towards where we're meant to be. And that as long as you are making decisions, you're moving forward in the right direction. There's no wrong path. Just sometimes there's a little bit more resistance and sometimes there's a little bit more learning required, but it's all important. And life is really just, life is change and life is growth. And if we embrace that with an open heart and an open mind, and we allow ourselves to experience the hard, seemingly negative emotions, to the depth that we experience those, we can experience the positive, really uplifting ones too. And it gets to be both. And more than anything, I think that we should all be seeking this sense of aliveness and purpose over this sense of happiness and contentment, because that's going to show up along the way. But if we follow our aliveness, we're going to be able to experience so much more joy.
I felt that 110%. Now, lastly, what can anybody expect that is going to tune into maybe any of your life coaching sessions, or we talked about it earlier, your intuitive breathwork sessions? What can somebody expect? Because I'm going to link all of that in the description in the videos. And I want, anybody that's interested, definitely check out, what Taylor offers. But what can clients expect and how can they find you?
Oh my God, I want to say like a life-changing transformation. Honestly, I'm not usually one to like speak so highly of experiences, but honestly, the transformations that I experience, it's my number one goal is helping people connect back to themselves, to be able to trust themselves, to be able to lean into their intuition, to be able to feel their sense of alignment so that they can have themselves, have that belief and have that energy within themselves. And sometimes it takes having someone outside of you to activate that within you. So I do mindset and energy and breath work and strategy. And I do a very holistic approach where I look at a person as they are, and we assess every area of your life from a very holistic standpoint and figure out what's in alignment, what's out of alignment, and help you get back into that sense of you being the most expressed version of you so that you can create your purpose from this sense of wholeness. And sometimes that requires healing. Sometimes that requires working through triggers and having hard conversations. And sometimes that is working through and rewriting limiting beliefs or shifting energy and letting go of some of the stuff that's stuck inside of your system. And sometimes it's simply like making big decisions and having the strategy and the steps in place. And so everything that I do is tailored to the person that's in front of me. And I use a very intuitive, heart-centered approach where whatever that person needs, I am the container and the mirror and the support for that. And that is through my one-on-one coaching. That can be through breath work. And I also have a group program called the Conscious Coach Ascension, which is for conscious coaches and leaders who want to elevate their impact and their income so that they can serve the world from this sense of alignment. And so for me, it really comes back to helping people to come into alignment. And I speak on it all the time, but it really is that connection with our true, authentic, higher self and making decisions from that place. Because I believe that when we're there, we feel so much more on purpose and the world gives back. The world gives back. And so I think it's a Tony Robbins quote, but it's like life supports that which supports life. So when we support life, we are so supported along the way. And so that's what I'll say about that.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, hearing your story, getting the inspiration from your story. I mean, you talked a lot about some really good topics, and I mean, it resonated with me perfectly. Now, I will, again, link all of your information down below in the description. But with all of that being said, guys, thank you, Taylor, for tuning in. Thank you for sharing your story again. Just remember, embrace now, doubt kills, and live your legacy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.